Have you ever seen light aim exactly where darkness is about to fall? I worked the night shift at Hollow Point Lighthouse. It had been decommissioned years ago, but the town kept a watchman posted for safety, mostly, and tradition. I didn't mind. It was quiet, isolated, and paid better than any desk job. The structure itself was old and noble, perched above the harbor like a sentinel. The lantern hadn't functioned in decades, power disconnected, glass fogged with salt and time. I mostly sat in the keeper's quarters, logged weather reports, and did occasional checks on the structure. Easy work, until the light came on. It was 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday when I saw it. A sharp beam sliced through the fog, sweeping across the bay like a blade of white fire. It shouldn't have been possible. There was no electricity, no restoration. And yet, there it was, piercing the dark. I raced up the spiral staircase, flashlight in hand. My boots echoed on the metal steps. At the top, the lamp chamber was hot. Not warm, hot. The beam, still shining, was fixed, not rotating like the old mechanism was designed to do. Just pointing. I followed it with my eyes. It was aimed directly at a house on the hill above town. Nothing seemed unusual. Just a modest white home, porch light off, windows dark. I logged the incident and reported it to the preservation committee in the morning. They brushed it off as a prank or hallucination. But that night, I read the news. That same house had caught fire at 2:41 a.m. A retired couple lived there. Only one survived. I couldn't shake the feeling. The timing, the aim, the light. The next night, I waited. At 2:17 exactly, the beam flashed on again. This time, it pointed farther inland. Another house, this one near the forest's edge. I didn't sleep. I just stood by the window and stared toward that glowing line of white slicing through the night. At 3:06 a.m., the 911 scanner reported a break-in at that address. A father and daughter. The man was found tied to a chair, babbling nonsense. The girl was gone, still missing. I stopped reporting the light. No one believed me anyway, and I couldn't explain it. Night after night, it returned. Always 2:17. Always a different house. Always followed by something awful. A gas leak, a disappearance, a suicide. Once, it pointed at a house I recognized. A friend's. I drove there like a madman, pounding on their door, begging them to get out. They thought I was drunk or having a breakdown. Hours later, their teenage son was found unconscious in the garage, fumes from a faulty heater leaking into his car. That's when I knew I wasn't just watching. I was witnessing a pattern, or a warning, or a curse. I began mapping it, marking where the light pointed, predicting where tragedy would strike. But every time I tried to warn someone, it backfired. They ignored me. Or worse, something even worse happened. Like the light didn't want to be interfered with. One night, I decided to photograph it, document it. I climbed the tower before 2 a.m., camera in hand, and waited in the lantern room. The fog rolled in thick, cold against the glass. At exactly 2:17, I heard it. Click. Not the camera, the switch. But I never touched it. The lantern flared to life. The gears, rusted for years, shifted and creaked. The entire room pulsed with heat and light. I looked out and froze. It wasn't pointing at the town. It was pointing down, at the keeper's quarters. At me. A chill climbed my spine. I turned to leave, and the door slammed shut behind me. Locked. I twisted a knob, kicked, shouted. Nothing. The air thickened. The beam brightened. I could see the shadows it cast on the fog, stretching unnaturally long. I felt watched, not just from the town, but from behind the glass. Inside the lantern itself, something in there moved. When the light finally went dark, the door creaked open on its own. I stumbled out, trembling, soaked in sweat. I didn't return to the quarters. I left the lighthouse that night and slept in my truck with every light on. The next morning, I quit. I thought I'd left it behind. But 3 nights ago, months since I walked away, I woke at 2:17 a.m. Light was pouring through my bedroom window. Bright, white, blinding. I live 30 miles inland. There are no lighthouses here, but the light knows where to look. How does something locked from the outside leave claw marks inside, with your name scrawled in the dust below it? I spent a long weekend last fall in a remote coastal cabin in Maine. My job had drained me, my relationship was in shambles, and I needed quiet. Space. Time. The rental sat about a mile from an old lighthouse, one that hadn't worked in decades. The locals called it Widow's Watch, said it was cursed, or haunted, or both. I assumed it was just a nickname meant to give tourists goosebumps. The first 2 days were uneventful. Gray skies, windy nights, occasional gulls, and the rhythmic churn of the tide. I mostly read, cooked, and walked the beach. Then on the third night, around 1:30 in the morning, I heard something I still can't explain. It was a woman crying. At first, I thought maybe a TV had kicked on, or that my phone was auto-playing something from a tab I forgot to close. But the sound didn't fade or glitch. It was steady, soft, and unmistakably human. It came from outside. I opened the door and stepped out onto the deck. The night was cold, fog rolling in from the sea. The moon was buried behind clouds, but visibility was decent. That's when I heard it again, closer now. Sobbing, desperate, hollow, dragged out like she hadn't breath between cries. And it was coming from the direction of the lighthouse. Now, the structure was supposedly sealed up, boarded since the 90s. The Coast Guard kept it that way due to safety concerns. Still, I grabbed a flashlight and walked the narrow trail leading to it. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe it was just a prank. Maybe I was half asleep and mishearing the wind. But as I got closer, I felt that slow crawl of unease, like something was watching. The lighthouse stood still and dead in the mist. No lights, no movement. The sobbing had stopped. I circled the base. Heavy wooden doors bolted shut, rusted chains wrapped across the handles. No footprints in the sand. No broken boards. I was just about to turn back when I saw it. The lantern room, at the very top, was fogged, but something had wiped the inside of the glass. Like a handprint. I couldn't stop staring at it. I backed up to get a better look, and that's when I noticed something worse. There were claw marks behind the glass. Not scratches, gouges. Deep, jagged trenches in the condensation-covered walls of the lantern room. They formed erratic arcs, like someone, or something, had tried to dig their way out. And just beneath one of those gashes, etched crudely in the dust, my name. My full name. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. I don't remember the walk back to the cabin, only the sensation that something unseen was pacing me through the trees. Every time I stopped, I heard twigs snap, a faint shuffle behind me. I never turned around. Inside, I locked every door and drew the curtains. Slept with the lights on, or tried to, because at exactly 3:07 a.m., the sobbing returned, right outside my window. It was clearer now, desperate, begging. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like pleading. Hands pressed against the glass. The faint creak of wood on the porch. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just laid there, frozen, until the sound eventually faded. The next morning, I packed up and left 3 days early. I told the rental company there was a plumbing leak and ate the refund loss. On my way out of town, I stopped at a gas station and asked the older clerk about the lighthouse. He looked up slowly and said, "You heard her?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "She cries for whoever's next," he said. "Some say it's the wife of a keeper who went mad and locked her in the lantern room to die. Others say it's him, still crawling around in there, trying to claw his way out." I asked about the scratches, the name in the dust. He just stared at me and said, "Then she's chosen you." I moved apartments a week later. Changed jobs. Changed cities. It's been months since the cabin. I still haven't gone near the coast. Haven't told anyone, until now. But lately, I've started waking up around 3:07 every night. Not to crying, to scratching. And the worst part? Last night, I found saltwater footprints in my hallway, leading up to the attic. Have you ever heard a knock at your door when you knew, absolutely knew, you were alone? I was volunteering with a historical preservation group when they assigned me to the old Hollow Point Lighthouse, a rust-streaked skeleton of a tower perched on a jagged cliff edge overlooking the Atlantic. The foundation was crumbling, the glass was long gone from the beacon, and the spiral staircase groaned like an old man's back. Still, something about it felt noble, like it had been waiting to be remembered. They set me up in the attached keeper's quarters with a cot, some canned food, and a massive ring of brass keys that clinked ominously when they moved. I was alone, completely alone, on that cliffside. The nearest town was 15 miles of winding road and fog-choked forest away. The first knock came my second night. It was just past 1 a.m. I was half asleep, lulled by the rhythm of waves crashing below, when I heard it, 3 distinct knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate, coming from the heavy wooden door downstairs. I froze, heart thudding. Who the hell would be out here at this hour? I crept to the window and peeked out. Nothing but silver moonlight and the gravel path leading into the trees. Still, I grabbed a flashlight and headed down. No one. I opened the door to be sure. Wind howled in, sharp with salt and cold. I scanned the grounds, empty. But as I turned to go back inside, I saw them. Wet footprints, boot-sized, leading in from the doorway. Not to it. I stood frozen, flashlight beam trembling as it followed the trail. The prints went straight across the wooden floor, then up the spiral stairs into the lighthouse tower. I followed, the boards creaking under my feet. The air grew colder the higher I climbed, as if I were walking into a freezer. The prints ended halfway up, just stopped. No turnaround, no smudges, like the person had vanished. I barely slept that night. Over the next week, it happened again and again, always at 1:03 a.m. Always 3 knocks, always those wet prints, sometimes faint, sometimes fresh, always ending on the stairs. I started leaving my recorder on. It caught the knocks, but no footsteps, no voices, just that damn creaking as the prints went up by themselves. By the 5th night, I couldn't pretend it was a prank. I was too far from anyone. I'd locked every door. Still it came. The local historian, a guy named Mark, stopped by one afternoon to drop off some archival material. I mentioned the knocks, half joking, half pleading for an explanation. He went pale. "You didn't read the file I left you?" he asked. I hadn't, just skimmed. Mark sat down, pulled out a weathered binder, and flipped to a yellowed newspaper clipping. Lighthouse keeper disappears after storm. Boots found on staircase. The man's name was Elias Reardon. Worked alone here in the 1950s. Went missing during a nor'easter. They found water pooled in the lantern room. His boots were on the stairs. No body. The final log in the keeper's journal just said, "He's knocking again." I didn't want to believe it. But that night, the knocks came earlier. Midnight. Then again at 12:30. And again at 12:52. No rhythm now, just urgency. The prints were fresher. Dripping. I swear I smelled seaweed. And the stairs? The wood was damp. Slick, like something had crawled up, dragging itself. I barricaded my door. Slept with the flashlight in hand. The next night, the knocks didn't come from the front. They came from inside. Knock, knock, knock. On the ceiling. I backed into the corner, staring up. Something shifted above me. A faint, wet creak from the spiral stairs. And then, faintly, the sound of a boot dragging. I didn't leave that room until morning. By the time my 2-week shift ended, I'd lost 10 pounds, barely slept, and refused to go near the tower. When the next volunteer arrived, I warned him. He laughed, said maybe it was just the wind. 2 nights later, he called me at 1:04 a.m. All he said was, "There are footprints on my bed." Then the line went dead. They never found him. And I've never stopped hearing the knocks. Even now, back in the city. Some nights, just past 1 a.m., I wake to that same sound on my apartment door. Knock, knock, knock. And once, just once, I followed the wet footprints down the hall. They stopped at my mirror.